It's always a good podcast when Andrew says the S word.
Welcome, everyone, to another awesome episode of the Average Ontario Anglers Fishing Podcast. If you are new to this, or at least new to this podcast, I'm going to just quickly tell you what it's about. It's about average people fishing. The average people in question is myself and Jesse.
Yeah.
There we go. So we've been fishing for over 20 years now, but we know some things. We get awesome people that know more. But today's episode is going to be all about not what we know, but what we think. That's right. It's another AOA Q&A where we just tell you our opinion and you can just take it or leave it. Most likely leave it on the bank. But hey, if you like it, you can take it to the bank. That was lame. Okay, moving on. We actually have a TNT today. We sprang from the long run of interesting fishing facts we've been having, and it's a TNT, explosion noises. And Jesse's going to be handling that. And then we're going to get into our main topic of some listener-asked questions that Jesse was able to post on Instagram and Patreon. So we got some good responses there. We're going to be getting into those. So Jesse's going to be firing those at me at breakneck speed, and I'm going to be slowing him down and rambling way too long on it. And I know Jesse will too. So stay tuned. But first off, Jesse's going to hit us with that TNT.
Yes. So it is November. Cold. You know what that means, Andrew? What lure comes to your mind?
Oh,
no. No, just kidding. What lure comes to your mind? What lure comes to your mind that's slow and effective?
Jerkbait.
Jerkbaits. I thought we could do a little TNT about jerkbaits, because if you are still fishing, maybe you're shore fishing, maybe you're fishing from a boat, a jerkbait is something that you probably have tied on this time of year, right until ice up. And like I mentioned, one of the first lures that me and Andrew use every single year, usually in March, we start using it, is jerkbaits. They're great lures. I know we've covered jerkbait fishing a few times, but they're great lures if you're just new because they attract fish from long distances away. A lot of them have flash. This particular one, this is the Rapala Ripstop. It has flat sides and it has very shiny sides. So those flat sides are like mirrors underwater. So they attract fish from far off, and the erratic action also attracts fish. But the cool thing is they're erratic, they're shiny, they're jumping around. And then when you stop jerking them, they suspend perfectly and just sit there. And that gives those cold water fish that are hungry, but their metabolism is low because the water's cold, it gives them a chance to come up and eat that bait. So that's why they're so effective. But that's not the topic today. The topic I wanted to cover is something that me and Andrew have been doing for a few years, and that is modifying your jerkbaits. And specifically, modifying your jerkbaits with different hook configurations. One of Andrew's favorite fish, and one of my favorite fish now too, is the old northern pike, the old sawbill, the old slimy thing.
I was going to say slime rocket.
Yeah, it's not rocket. Hammer handle. They're great. Pike love jerkbaits. Unfortunately, because they have big teeth in their mouth, oftentimes when you're using a jerkbait with 3 treble hooks on it, it is an absolute pain in the bum cheeks to get it out of their face. It's terrible. So what do? Here's some modifications that you can make to lures to make them A, easier to get out of fish's mouths, or B, have a little bit more attraction to the fish. Now, the first thing that you can do, and we've been doing this for a few years, is if you're using a jerkbait for pike specifically, or any species, notice that most jerkbaits that are sizable have 3 hooks, just like this ripstop I was talking about. It has 3 smaller treble hooks. Now, if you notice this lure that I'm holding up, this is a dual Realis jerkbait and Fire Tiger. This is one of my favorite pike Fire Tiger jerkbaits. I've removed the middle hook. So I have a front hook and a back hook. And what I did was with the 2 remaining hooks, I upsize one size. So I don't know exactly off the top of my head. Some genius guy probably knows, but say they were size 8 hooks, I put size 6 hooks on. I think these particular hooks are size 4. They used to be size 6. So I upsized the hook so they're a little bit bigger. So when that big northern grabs this, he's still going to get hooks, but he's only going to get 2 hooks in his mouth instead of 3. And technically the bigger hooks are stronger. So I'm going to have a better chance of catching a trophy if it happens to swim by and grab my lure. So we really like this, especially for northern pike. I know what Andrew specifically does is he just picks lures that have 2 hooks on them. Like, what's one of your favorite pike jerkbaits with 2 hooks?
I love the X-Wrap and the size that still only has the 2 hooks.
Yeah.
And yeah, they They're fantastic.
I'll take 2 hooks any day unhooking
Yes.
pike over 3 hooks inside the mouth. Not just for the fish's sake, but also for your hand's sake. You know how many hooks get put in people's hands? It's terrible. Now, another thing you can do that I personally haven't tried, but it's something that I really want to try next year is those single inline hooks. You can actually buy single hooks, but the eye of the hook is turned in such a way that when you hook it on a regular split ring, it faces the right direction. If you just use regular single hooks on a split ring, they'll be facing the wrong direction. So you have to get specific hooks. They're called inline singles. And a lot of people in Europe use those for fishing for northern pike, especially because when they engulf a jerkbait, they usually take that whole thing in their mouth, and those single hooks are going to hook them a vast majority of the time. You don't need all these treble hooks. So using less hooks or less hooks like a single hook instead of a triple treble hook, that is one effective way to be damaging less fish in the water. And you do get a better hook set too with bigger hooks, obviously. Now, the next thing that you can do, and I've tried this because oftentimes when we're fishing for northern pike, you're using a steel leader or a fluorocarbon leader. And even though Andrew makes some really lightweight fluorocarbon leaders, he makes these leaders called just-in-case leaders. And if you didn't know, why don't you explain that quick, Andrew? What's a just-in-case?
So it's only 50-pound fluoro. And I say only because most of the time when you get a fluoro leader, the smallest I could find in stores myself was 80 to 100 pound. So 50 pound is still thick enough where the pike don't bite through it. I have yet to lose a single pike while targeting them with them. I make them with just a solid welded ring, usually about 7 inches long. So they're not huge, not extra, again, fluorocarbon sink. So I try and limit the amount of weight that's on it. And I use a nice finesse snap as well. And the reason why, even the crimp rings, I use the mini crimps as well to get that leader as light as possible. And it does 2 things. One, it pulls your weight down a lot less than a steel leader will, or a thicker fluorocarbon leader. And because it's a little bit more flexible and whatnot, it doesn't hurt the action as much. So I'll even fish it for bass and whatnot in pike-infested waters, so I don't lose my bass baits. And it's kind of fun because then I get to actually toss bass baits or pike sometimes, and they just crush them.
Exactly, yeah. The problem with using a steel leader, a lot of people don't like using a steel leader or a fluorocarbon leader is because they say that it ruins the action of the bait. Now, that may be true to a certain extent, but it's something you got to do. You can't just be chucking jerkbaits out there and getting them bit off because pike will bite through most lines very easily. And if you're not interested in donating expensive lures, but also possibly killing fish that have lures stuck in their face.
If you like using Vision 110s.
Most people don't use $35 jerkbaits for pike fishing, but it happens. But the point we're getting at is if you have to use a leader, these jerkbaits, one of the main things about what makes them so effective is that they are neutrally suspending. That means that they don't float, they don't sink. Generally. Now, you buy high-end jerkbaits, they are very tuned to do exactly that. Cheaper ones may have a very slow sink or a very slow rise, but generally they just sit there. But when you add a fluorocarbon leader or a steel leader or any kind of leader so that you don't get bit off, what are you doing? You're adding weight. You're adding weight so that lure is going to slowly sink. Now, it wasn't me that came up with this. I saw some other guys doing this, but they basically were like, well, we're going to take some weight off of the lure. Now, how do you do that? This actually works very well. So here is a classic jerkbait. This is a husky jerk. This is the HJ14. It's the bigger one. What I've done is I've removed the front hook and the split ring. I've also removed the split ring from the front of the bait as well, if there was one. So I have 2 treble hooks on the back and the middle, no treble hook in the front. And what that does is that has taken off a little bit of weight. Is it the same weight as the leader? No. But it is enough that it does make a difference, I find. It doesn't sink as far. And let's be serious. When a pike eats this jerkbait, it's going to inhale the thing usually or headshot it anyway. So it's going to get one of these hooks in its face anyway. From what I've noticed so far, I'm not going to say that you're going to get the exact same hookup ratio. Obviously, if there's 3 hooks, it's better than having 2. But I haven't noticed any bad results myself when I've used this for pike. Because generally when we're fishing for pike, they're fairly aggressive fish. And even a bait like this, which is like 5 inches long, they engulf the thing. And when they engulf it, those 2 razor sharp hooks on the back, they're going to get the fish. So the fact that I've taken the front hook off, not only does it help with unhooking fish, it also helps the bait suspend better when you're fishing. So that is another thing you can do, especially if you're fishing for bass or for pike. I wouldn't do it for bass myself, but for pike, definitely I would try that. Now, the last modification, it's a modification that a lot of jerkbaits already have, but a lot of them don't. And some people swear by it, and some people they don't care about it. So I don't know. We'll ask Andrew what he thinks. But one thing that a lot of jerkbaits have is a feathered treble. Now, lots of very, very, very popular jerkbaits do not have feathered trebles on them. In fact, most of the Japanese like high-end jerkbaits, like the Vision 110, stuff like that, they don't have feathered trebles on them. But some people swear by them, especially for like fishing for smallmouth bass. Now, my thought on it is it makes the lure, when it's suspending, have a little bit of life. As you jerk the bait around, then it stops and the lure is suspending there. Those feathers just kind of like flail out and kind of look like a fin, but they also are kind of like undulating in the water, and it gives it just that secondary natural breathing action, in my opinion. It just makes it look a little bit more real. Does that matter? I have no idea. Some people say it matters. Some professionals say it doesn't matter. What do you think, Andrew?
I'm a firm believer in that. I think, for my confidence at least, I like the feathered treble. I think it does just give a bit more natural look for presentation to it. Even putting the feathered treble on the front hook instead of at the back. Sometimes on the baits, if you have too much drag, I have noticed on certain baits, if they weren't designed to have it, if there's anything trailing behind the bait, it can really kill some of the action. So if there's something that didn't come with a feathered treble to begin with, and you put one on the back, you want to try it, and you're like, it just doesn't have that same like darting action and whatnot. Try putting the feathered treble closer to the front hook, because when it suspends, when it stops, it's still going to come down. It's still going to give life, have movement, still has all the benefit of being at the back, but it doesn't have that big pull on the back of the bait. So even that can still, help with the action somewhat, but still give that awesome, feathered treble enhancement.
For sure. And one thing I really like using it for is for pike fishing. I don't think it really matters for pike fishing. It may be more of a confidence thing for me. But again, I'm holding up this Duo Realis jerkbait. This is about 5 inches long. It's bright fire tiger. The treble hook I have in the back, it's actually a dangle baits. It's got fluorescent chartreuse feathers in white and some sparkle tinsel in there. And it's just very bright. And it just adds to the brightness of the lure. And this is a lure that I use generally in the spring when the water is fairly murky. So I just feel like it gives it a little bit of extra visual appeal to those fish that are trying to find it in that murky water. So anyway, those are a few modifications that you can make to your jerkbait. Can you catch fish right out of the box stock on a jerkbait? Absolutely. But we always think, with those modifications when it comes to unhooking a fish better by removing some of the hooks or changing to a bigger size and having less hooks, that can be a good thing, especially if you're practicing catch and release. But some of the other things like adding feathered trebles, it may just be a confidence thing. But as we always say, confidence is king. It's key to having success. If you think just for a second that those feathered trebles are going to help you catch more fish, you're going to fish that bait with more confidence. And I guarantee you're going to catch more fish. So next time you're out, if you're going to be out this fall, or maybe you're like, I can't get out till spring, but during the winter, maybe one of your hobbies can be learning how to tie feathered trebles. It's very easy. I do it myself. I mean, I bought some of these nice ones from Dangle, but this trashy one on this Rapala, I tied this myself. It's not bad. You don't have to be a pro to do it. You just need a cheap fly tying vise, bunch of feathers from the dollar store, and you're good. So definitely check it out.
That's awesome. And another bonus I just want to add too, for if you upsize your hooks and only put 2 on a jerkbait. I know a lot of the time these jerkbaits, they're more for, like, they have finesse hooks. So it's really easy to get, like, if a bass looks at it, they get hooked, which are great. They have their purpose. But when I'm going for pike, these pike, they're not just like lightly nipping at it. They're killing this thing, and they're headshotting it or they're swallowing it. So having just a slightly larger, bit beefier hook on the front and the back, I find you can have a bit more or a lot more control of the fish because you're not worried about bending those hooks out on a pike. Yeah.
And it doesn't take much to bend out hooks. I remember this spring we were fishing and it was a fairly big northern. It was that 37.5 incher, and all the hooks in the fish were completely bent out. Mm-hmm. So like it doesn't take much on those thin wire bass hooks to bend out. And also if you
and that was only on a medium action rod, medium or medium light.
Yeah. So it doesn't take much.
That.
And if you're going to do that mod too as well, consider putting on better split rings as well. Because those split rings, some of those finesse jerk baits, you can literally grab the hook and pull on it and the split ring will actually just open up and it's gone. You don't want to hook like a 40-inch northern, your PB, and just the hooks pop out when you're trying to horse it in. So definitely, good tips.
Fantastic. That's a good TNT. I need to think of more because I'm always doing interesting fishing facts about gross bugs and stuff. And Jesse's actually here working hard to give you real information that will help you. Meanwhile, I'm like, don't eat fireflies. They're poisonous and you'll die.
That is a good tip, though.
You can only eat, I think it was, if you eat more than 10, I think it'll kill you. So if you swallow one bug while riding a quad, you're okay. Don't worry about it. Anyways, I don't think that's going to come up in our Q&A, but we'll see. Jesse's going to start firing some of these questions at us, and we're going to try and answer it in 30 seconds or less. Keyword there is try, and in the end, at least you're going to get our opinion on something. If it helps you or not, we're going to find out. So I know we got a really good response actually from this, because Jesse posted a couple things online, and we always have some awesome listeners that always write in. So we're going to get started right away.
So we actually have a question from Kyle, and he says, what is your favorite multi-species bait?
Chatterbait, I would have to say. I feel like it's always the go-to for me is chatterbait. It's my favorite bait, and it is. It's my favorite bait, and I use it for all the species.
Yeah.
If I had to give something else, it'd probably be, I like fishing a fluke. A fluke for either on a light jig head or even weightless. I've caught everything on that too. I really like that.
Yeah. I'd have to say for myself personally, it'd probably be swim baits. And by that, I mean like soft plastic paddle tail swim baits, because you can catch everything on those. From like, we start off in the spring, we're crappie fishing with little paddle tail swim baits on a little, 16th ounce jig head. And then you get into walleye season, the little, 2.5, 3 inch swim baits for walleye. For bass, you can up it a bit, get some of those big X zone swammers, 4.5 inch Texas rig them, fish them right through the weeds. Then you get into like pike and musky. You can use, the sky's the limit, right? Like with pike and musky. I mean, we like the Shadzilla Juniors. I know we always talk about those. So they're 7.5 inch. So it's not huge, right? But then you can go huge. On the weekend we were fishing and we were chucking 9.5, 10 inch swim baits. They imitate fish, and fish eat fish. So, I mean, it's hard to beat that versatility for a bait for sure. So here's a good question from Thornbird the Fifth. Yes. Very fancy name. Thornbird the Fifth. He said, any tips for a better, faster, or stronger hook set? That's a good question. That's a good
extra
question.
Heavy, slackline that baby. I call it the Rod Breaker 5000. A better, faster hook set. There's actually a couple things that you can do without extra thought, improve your hook set. So if you find you're missing fish because you're waiting too long or light biting or whatnot, if you use a stiffer rod and you switch to a more sensitive line like braid or even fluorocarbon if you're using mono, it's surprising how much time will take on a hook set for it actually to affect your bait. Especially let's say you're using a moderate fast rod and mono, like it's got to move a lot. Because that line stretching just with the water resistance and that rod's already flexing before the line starts to move. Jesse, actually, for frog fishing, you actually have the opposite problem, but making changes like that can actually help that way too. So if you find yourself using a bit of a softer rod or you're using monofilament, try switching to something a bit crisper or switching to braid, and that might automatically help improve your speed on your hook set.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of using, say, like a moderate fast rod, you might go up to a fast or an extra fast rod. You get to the power of the rod faster. It's the same power. So it's like a medium heavy moderate, which is like a crankbait rod, and a medium heavy extra fast. They both have the same power technically, but the action is different. So the action on the moderate, you don't get to the action or the power until the rod bends in half. But on the extra fast, only 20% of it bends before you get that power. So like Andrew said, that'll increase, your hook set easily. But again, you have to kind of keep it in check with what baits you're using. You don't want to be like, oh, I'm fishing jerk baits with tiny treble hooks and this super stiff rod that doesn't bend at all. You're going to lose fish. So it's kind of a little bit of a balancing act there. That's a good question though. And definitely
another thing I'd mention too is I've noticed I'm trying not to set the hook as hard or as much. And I'm changing my hooks to just be like high-end hooks. And on those, basically just like you can crank into fish and it'll just like sink right in oftentimes. Even we were using really nice, I think the Berkeley Fusion hooks, doing some frogging on it with soft-bodied, rubber frogs. And they're just like sliding into the fish. They have a special coating on them. And there are many times like we wouldn't even set the hook. You just start like cranking down on it and it pulls that bass like right into the mouth, fully hooked, engaged. So if you're having a hard time, you find you're missing fish and you think it's your hook set, make sure your hooks are sharp, make sure you have good high quality hooks, and that might also fix the issue. Maybe a perceived issue with the hook set there too. So just a little thought.
That's a good point, because oftentimes you watch like professional bass fishing and they're setting the hook extremely exaggerated. With modern rods and braids that don't stretch at all, you don't have to set the hook that hard. Even in heavy weeds, you don't have to set the hook that hard. Unless you're like flipping into like, dense hyacinth beds in Florida for like 10-pound largemouth. Yeah, don't over exaggerate your hook sets. Don't worry about it. All right. So Bradley, he asked this question. This is a great question for this time of year. And he says, Is it still worth or viable to fish in the colder months for non-ice fishers started fishing this year? So if you just started fishing, I don't know if you have a boat or not, but let's just pretend you don't have a boat, because I don't have a boat. Like, I have a small boat, but this time of year, we're talking November going into December. Is it still worth fishing? I know, like, a lot of people, they think, oh, fishing, when they just get into it, it's great in, late spring and summer and early fall. And then after that, they're like, I'm done. There's nothing to do. That's what a lot of people do. But believe me, just because you don't see a lot of people fishing, they are, because this is a great time of year to fish, even for shore anglers. Now, I would highly recommend, we did a shore fishing in the fall podcast a few episodes ago. Definitely check that one out if you haven't. But like we talked about jerkbait fishing in the TNT earlier, pike fishing this time of year is on fire. It's amazing. And there's many urban spots. If you live in the city, I don't know where this guy lives, but if you live in the city, there's tons of spots that you can fish. If you're, say on Lake Ontario, you can fish marinas, you can fish harbors, you can fish a lot of areas, river mouths that the season is still open. And these fish, they're fattening up for the winter. They're looking for food. It may not be the hottest time of year to go out and smash like a million fish, but the fish are very willing participants. And then you also have fish like steelhead fishing. Now, if you're just getting into fishing, that may be a little overwhelming because it is a little more advanced, but it's not something that is impossible for a beginner to learn. So you have pike, you have trout. This time of year, people are still catching walleye and bass. You can even catch them from piers, from river mouths, stuff like that. So there is access to fish this time of year, 100%. And you may be out there, you just have to dress warm so you're comfortable. Make sure you have some, snacks and hot drinks, and just go out there and fish for a few hours. Don't plan to fish out there like, from 6 a.m. till dark. You might freeze to death, but do some planning, have a few good lures that are good for the area that you're going to fish, and just go out. It's a great time of year.
And slow down your presentation. Like Jesse said, there's lots of guys still going out there targeting bass and walleye. You may notice that the action can slow down during these like really colder temperatures coming in. But if you slow your presentation down, these fish are still feeding. Yes, their metabolism slow down. They don't feed as much. They're not trying to grow. They're just trying to survive right now. But they are still feeding. They still need to feed all winter long even. So just slow down your presentation. And just because you're not seeing them right on shore like you used to, those weeds are dead. There can still be green weeds, 20, 30 feet offshore. And if you can find areas that have a green weed bed out there, focus around those areas. That's where we're going to be congregating, coming in, staying in that, because that's where the forage still is.
Definitely. And going on kind of the same topic, William asked this. He said, what is the behavior of pike in fall, and how would you target them effectively? What lures would you use? So like Andrew said, these fish, when the water temperature drops, like the water temperature right now, it's pretty cold. It's not like we're anywhere close to ice forming. That's a few weeks or months away. But the water's getting colder. But that doesn't mean fish like pike. Like pike like cold water. They like it. They're not like bass. Bass kind of become very sluggish. But fish like pike, they like cold water, especially the big ones. They love it. It's their favorite time of year. You can catch them under the ice. You can definitely catch them months before the ice is coming because it's not too cold. The cool thing about this time of year is these big fish, they oftentimes come shallow. And the reason they come shallow is because they're following bait fish that are going shallow. They follow the food. You want to catch the predator, you find the food, and the food is shallow. If these fish are chasing in whatever they're eating, perch, suckers, whatever that is schooling and coming in shallow, these big pike are coming in. And the best lures that we've found in the fall anyway, in our experience, is jerkbaits, like we said. Again, these fish are still aggressive, but it is still cold water, so they're still moving a bit slower. So you have to give them something that is appetizing, something a little bit on the bigger side because they're trying to fatten up, but something that isn't too much of a chase for them. They're not going to swim 50 feet to grab something. Keep casting in the area where you think there's fish. Have a nice juicy presentation and fish it nice and slow, like Andrew said. And these fish, they're chewing up for winter. So another lure, I got it right here. That's the Shadzilla Jr. I know we always talk about this bait. This one's been chewed by more than a few pike, as you can tell. But that's a great bait for fall as well. It's not too big, believe me. These fish will chew those things.
And right now, pike can start their spawn under the ice. And when they are like in the fall, they'll start congregating around like river mouths right before the ice forms. They're going to be looking for those shallow bays. They're going to be staying pretty close to, again, where Jesse said, where there's fish, but also they're prepping for their spawn. So that's kind of on the back of their mind. They're going to be going towards those areas sometimes. But like Jesse said, the water temperatures are getting colder. They're still absolutely active, but they're going to want to move for when it's A, worthwhile, or 2, it's easy. So if you can have, like Jesse said, jerkbait is fantastic. A substantial enough meal that's also like appearing half dead coming by. pike are very opportunistic. A dead bait works well for pike, especially in like the really cold temperatures like ice out. Dead baiting for pike is really popular. So if you can just slow it down, have a good enough meal for it, pike are actively feeding right now because they need to convert that energy into, getting their eggs, getting their sperm ready for the spring spawn.
It's always a good podcast when Andrew says the S word.
Milt. Okay, they're getting their eggs and their milt ready.
Here's a good question from Mitch. He says, do you throw musky bucktails? Favorite brand, make of bucktails? We try to throw everything. We do fish a lot of weedy lakes, so bucktails usually for us isn't one of our main baits that we throw. I generally throw a lot of spinner baits, like big musky spinner baits, but we have caught fish on bucktails. The brands there's so many brands, like you look at any musky fishing store or like this section, and there's tons of brands of bucktails. Bucktails, I think, what's your favorite one? The Dadson?
Yeah, the Dadson is on the pricier side. I mean, ask musky guys, that's what they cost.
Yeah.
But for somebody getting into it, they might seem a bit pricey. But I will say the startup on them is the best of the brands that I've used. And it really, like, he's got it dialed in. So his skirts on it, when you bring it beside the boat and those blades are creating that vortex behind it, they're just, the whole skirt's just moving like crazily. And I don't see that as much on other ones. So he's got that thing dialed in.
Yeah.
They do work well.
I do have one here.
But even...
This is a small, This is a 8 cheese curds short shaft. So they're definitely cool baits. And honestly, like I got this at Musky Odyssey, it was only $30. So like this isn't one of his big bucktails, but some of his are hundreds of dollars. So yeah, a bit expensive.
Yeah. I did like the beaver lures as well. He makes some and they're much lighter than I was expecting. But it's nice because I'm fishing areas that have a lot of weed, like almost to the surface. It works well because I don't have to, like, yes, you can burn blades. That can be very effective. But if you're going a little bit cooler on the temperatures, I don't want to be burning it in that fast. So having just a really not as heavily weighted bucktail to pull in, that works well too.
Yeah. And for us, what I find anywhere where we fish, especially in the summer, is I'm not chucking a lot of big bucktails. Like I'm not chucking like double 10s during the summer. Some guys do, and they catch giant fish. So we're not experts at all. But what I found that I catch the most fish on is smaller ones. And one that I've caught musky and other species too on is just like the Booker Tail 700s. This is a single. It's not huge. You don't need a big rod to chuck this, and it doesn't have a tremendous amount of pull. So it's pretty easy to throw. If you don't know, if you're chucking bucktails, like Mitch knows because he fishes musky, but big bucktails, like double 10s, even double 9s and stuff, when you're reeling them in, there's a lot of resistance. So you really need like a slow gear ratio, like a 5:1 or something, just to pull them in, or else you'll wear yourself out really fast. But these little ones, they don't have that much drag. And even these, like I've been using these Musky Mayhem baby girls. These are like little double 6s. During this early season, these are fantastic and they're small and they have like almost no pull when you reel them in. But there's lots of different brands. Like we've also like have a lot of like the handlebars, which are made in Ontario. There's Musky Mayhem. I've done well on like Blue Fox, which is more of like a budget brand, or even Meps. Like you get one of those Meps marabous. Those are fantastic as well. So I'd say pick a lure that you can afford that has high quality components, and then pick a color that gives you confidence and just go out and fish it, because we've not only caught musky on these bucktails, but we've caught a lot of other species on them too. I've caught big smallmouth bass. I caught a big channel catfish one time up in Ottawa. I was fishing this bucktail, like there's this island, and then there's like this like little narrow chute beside the shoreline. And I whipped the bucktail down and I'm reeling, and it, it's vortexing through the water. And all of a sudden it just like, boom, I smoked a fish. I thought it was a big muskie because it was fighting like super deep and it hit it really hard. And I got it up to the surface and it was like a 10 or 12 pound channel catfish. Just inhaled the bucktail. I was like, I wasn't even mad. I was like, this is awesome. But yeah, bucktails are cool. But again, I'm more of a spinnerbait guy myself.
Handlebars does have some cool stuff though.
He does.
That's
and it's reasonably priced too.
At CanCast, I have a couple things. Yeah. His spin well too.
Here's a question from Neil. He says, why don't you have a kayak yet? I'll tell you, I used to have a kayak. I used to be a kayak guy. But the reason I don't have a kayak now is because I do have a canoe. Like if I could afford to buy a secondary kayak just to fish by myself, I probably would pick one up. But right now I'm saving up for an actual boat that I can stand up in with a motor on the back. But I do like kayak fishing. If you're going to solo fish, I would recommend getting a kayak over a canoe. But oftentimes me and Andrew are fishing together. And if we're in a small craft in my canoe, I like to be able to fish in the same boat as him because he can scoop my fish up with the net. It's great. But yeah, I like having A canoe, for instance, because I can pack more stuff if I'm doing backcountry trips when I'm camping. You can't store stuff in a kayak. I've seen some guys try to do it. It's not good. I can check all these barrels and boxes and stuff of gear that I need for my tent and the site for when we're camping. You can't do that in a kayak. I can stand up and fish in the canoe. You can do that in a kayak as well. Kayaks are more suited for fishing, but canoes can, you can load a lot of cargo into them, which is good for what we do. If we didn't do a lot of camping, I probably would have a kayak, but no kayaks yet.
I do have a paddleboard now, and I'm going to be using that on like some real small bodies of water, hopefully in the next year. So I'm excited about that. That's a nice personal watercraft.
Yeah. Also reasonably priced. Yeah. Actually, my wife got one too this year, and I inflated it. It was rock hard. I was like, wow, I thought this would be mushy. It's rock hard. Feels like it's solid, and it's stable as heck. I was like, no wonder guys fish off these. All you need to do is put a little motor on the back and you'll be set. Here's a question from Wambaits Canada. Wes wants to ask a question. He says, how much are you already looking forward to CanCast 2025? I'm not going to lie. I'm pretty excited. I know we always are excited, but if you're not aware, CanCast is Canada's biggest fishing show. It is amazing. It is the best fishing show in Canada. I don't care what anyone says. It's the best one. It has no stupid, dumb vendors. Like, you don't go to CanCast and see like people selling like slippers, like some of the other shows. There's no filler booths. It's just everything's fishing. It's amazing. Like, I could literally walk through there for 3 days and not see everything. Me and Andrew go through and we're taking pictures, we're doing little videos and stuff, we're buying stuff. And at the end of it, we're exhausted. We're there for like 10 plus hours and we're like, I didn't get to see this. I didn't get to see that. Like, there's so much stuff there and there's so many people. Like, everyone there loves fishing. That's the thing I like about CanCast. Every single person there, maybe some people bring their spouse and they don't like fishing, but most of the people there are just obsessed with fishing. So you can get into some great conversations and meet people in the industry, meet the bait makers that you've seen all their products on social media, and you get to talk to them and realize they're just normal guys and they have good conversations. Some of them are weirdos. Most of them are pretty chill. And you can see me and Andrew there. Yeah, but yeah, we're excited. And just, in case you didn't know, it is...
I'm excited to hear...
What's the date, Andrew, though?
March
30th. March 30th. Put it in your calendars.
I don't remember anything, and I remember
nice.
That's how excited I am. But that's actually really impressive. I remembered that.
I'm impressed.
Another thing I'm really excited for about is I'm curious to see what giveaways they're going to have, because I won a raffle at Hashimoto Concepts last year, which was fantastic. I also won one of those Bubba giveaway bags. I think Bubba was putting it on with their scale and stuff like that, and I guessed the weight correctly. So I'm curious to see if I can win anything else this year.
Yeah, no, it's a great show. I had a lot of people last year ask us, is it worth driving to CanCast because they lived a bit farther away? I'll tell you how much worth it is. We had people the first year drive all the way from Ottawa. That's 4+ hours to get there. And they came again the second year. So it was obviously worth it. People were coming from hours and hours away. It's a great show. And even if you don't have a ton of money to spend there, get in the door. It's like $20 or something like that. Get in the door and just walk around. There's so much stuff to see, everything. And everyone's there. Like, if you're into kayak fishing, speaking of kayaks, they have a whole section that's like all the major brand of kayaks. Like, if you want to sit in one or look at the latest models of kayaks or just price them out, those guys are there and they know everything about what they sell. It's amazing. I almost did buy a kayak.
Yeah. And one other thing I'd mention, I know some places you go and there's like an entry fee for the door, and then you feel, like, I already spent money to get here to go spend money. CanCast is a place where I have no qualms about that, because I'll go and I'll spend $15, $20, whatever, to get in the door. And I'll save that on the first purchase I make.
Yeah.
Like, it's you get a lot of good deals at that show.
Yeah. I've been to other shows and you pay it, and it's usually really high, and it's like in, Toronto or whatever. And it's just like, you pay $20 to get in or whatever. And you walk around, you're like, well, this is not one of those shows. It's the opposite.
Yeah. You'll be leaving the door with product in your hand. I guarantee it.
Yeah. So here's a good question from Josh. He says, favorite type of water body for fall fishing, rivers, lakes, or ponds?
I always love rivers. I absolutely love rivers. I find that they are affected less by weather changes, and fish that live in current, they're a different breed. They fight better. But I find because they're constantly on the move, they don't turn off as easy. They're always a little bit willing to move for bait, because they're always on the move anyways in a current system. So I find, fall fishing, it's great everywhere. You can have really good success in all of those situations, but my preference is river fishing.
Definitely. I'd have to agree with that. Like I find ponds get pretty hard to fish in the fall. Like the ones that I fish anyway, It just seems like everything kind of dies and the fish are just like, eh. But in a river, it's like, I do like river fishing.
Everything's in a 10-foot square and they're all just feeding on each other constantly. So they don't want to touch anything you present. That's what I find in a pond.
Here's a good question from Lucas. He says, who are your favorite YouTube fishing personalities and channels? That's a good question because there are a lot of them. I'm going to name some of the ones that I follow because I try to keep up with all this stuff. And a lot of these are going to be not specifically Ontario or like Canadian channels, but this is what I watch. And again, this is going to vary depending on what kind of fish you like to fish. But obviously one of my favorite channels, Jay Siemens. I think
that's exactly what I was going to say.
He's like the Canadian fishing messiah. He just like, he's a nice guy. He catches fish. His channel just has blown up for good reason because he's so enjoyable to watch. He's so chill. He's a very good teacher. Like I'm watching an episode where he shows how he fillets pike and he's the way he's describing it. It's just like, oh man, I could do that. He's just a nice guy. Love that guy's channel and absolutely fantastic. I also like Aaron from Uncut Angling. His stuff is very scientific based and very cool. Some of the other channels that I personally follow, because like I've been more into musky fishing recently. So I do like some channels like Angling Anarchy. He's a musky guy. Brian, he fishes a lot, obviously in the States, lots of cool musky videos. Ben Stone Fishing, another really good musky guy, really cool. Make sure you check out Blue Collar Angling. So like a lot of us follow Blue Collar Angling on Instagram or TikTok, but they also have a YouTube channel as well. So make sure you check that out. And you have to think of the best YouTube channel out there. It's Average Ontario Anglers. What can I say? Honestly, I'm just looking through all my subscriptions and they're all just like musky. Dave Mercer.
Jesse is turning into a big musky guy.
Yeah.
Like I'm afraid for the day when he's going to be like, Andrew, do you want to buy all my bass gear? I only want to fish musky from now on. I can see it happening and I'm scared because I want to keep fishing bass with him too.
I will. Just wait till I get my own boat.
No, not musky only.
And of course, make sure you check out Cooper Gallant. Absolutely fantastic content. He's professionally done. Amazing. There's tons.
Yeah, really, really well done videos. And he is, obviously he's a hammer. Like he's a pro angler, legitimate pro angler, fishing successfully on the pro series. But you learn a lot from his stuff too. It's very entertaining to watch, but like you can pick up some good tips from him too.
Yeah. I'm just looking through my list. It's a lot of musky stuff and, bass stuff, but like there's a lot of that was my dad calling me. When you put your phone on silent and do not disturb, but someone calls you twice in a row and then it goes through? That's what happened. I did have my phone on silent, people. It was actually a family emergency, but I just hung up on my dad, so it's okay. Anyway, I was going to say there's lots of Ontario-based YouTube channels. I think of like Paddleheads. They have a lot of fishing adventures that they go on that I like to watch because I also like to see like where they're fishing, like not specific lakes, but I'm like, oh, that's cool. How they got into this. And it's quite the adventure. You're like, how do you get into these back lakes? Well, watch Paddlehead's video. They'll show you how much is involved in getting into a back lake. And it's a lot, believe me. Make sure you follow us on YouTube because we're starting to post more content. Not a lot, but when we post it, it's dang good.
It's very good.
Yes.
And I say that as a viewer as well, because Jesse's the one who edits those and puts the videos and stuff together. So when I get to see it, I am just like you listeners. I'm just wowed and amazed. I'm like, oh, I wish I could do that. And then I see myself in the video. I'm like, I was there.
Here's a great question. What is your favorite soft swim bait, 6 inches or bigger, specifically for bass? This is not going to surprise anyone because this is probably everyone's favorite 6-inch plus swim bait for bass. I really like the Megabass Mag Draft. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect bait. I don't care what anyone says. You have to retrieve it at a very specific speed or else it rolls over. Will they fix that? I don't know. I've bought some other comparable baits from other brands that seem to be, you can retrieve them faster. But I really like this bait. We actually used this early season bass this year. And because you could retrieve it really slow, that was what I was looking for. I needed a bait that had a big presence, but I could retrieve it really slow. And this is the albino color. To describe it, it's a 6-inch long, boot tail swim bait. And I've rigged this up with a line through system. So the treble hook's on the top. Generally, if you get the one that is already rigged, the treble hook's on the bottom. I just think the Mag Draft in general, it comes in many different sizes. The most popular one is the 6-inch. They also have an 8-inch, which I've caught fish on as well. And they also have a 10-inch, which is giant. And I think they have like a Japanese version, which is 5-inch. I'm pretty sure. But they're a great bait. And they're not cheap, but they're not like ridiculous. I think you can get a 2-pack of these for like $20. So they're $10 a piece. Not cheap, but they do catch a lot of bass. And they have a lot of drawing power, I found. I would see fish come out to look at it and not hit it. Say you'd see like a spot that you're like, I know there's a fish in there. And you fish like whatever, stick bait, whatever, but nothing comes out. Throw a swim bait like this and you'd be surprised that these big fish will come out to look at it. And then at least you'll know there's a fish there. So you'll realize that you just don't have the skills to catch it and you'll feel terrible. But anyway, that's probably my favorite. And this specific color is like albino, which is like white. Can't beat that. I also have the perch one as well, but there's tons of different colors you can choose from. And these are also widely available. You can buy them in almost every tackle shop now. So that's my favorite 6-inch or bigger swim bait. Joe asks us, when can I expect you to join me next musky season? Now this guy lives up, I'm pretty sure he lives up like near Georgian Bay or something. So the answer is invite me and I will come. Probably. This is a great question from Say Doggy Fishing. Adam he's insane. He says, who smells better after a backwoods camping adventure, Jesse or Andrew?
I'm going to say myself, only because usually I'm the guy like hanging right over top of the fire. And so I just like smell like campfire smoke. Campfire smoke and bug spray, the best cologne.
I would say that might be accurate because Andrew definitely smells worse than me, but he masks his odor with smoke.
I learned from Napoleon Bonaparte. You don't need to bathe. You just cover yourself with stronger smells. For all you history buffs out there, you get it.
I don't get it. I thought before we go on, we could talk about our giveaway this week.
Yeah. We have a really cool giveaway, actually. We kind of share a namesake somewhat.
Yeah.
Jesse's actually got some of the stuff. He sent us out a cool package that we're going to show you on the podcast. And for you audio listeners, we'll describe them to you. Don't worry. It's like, for the visually impaired kind of thing. So
yeah,
Jesse's going to do his best at describing what's going to be included in this giveaway.
Yeah. So this brand is actually called Happy Loon. So naturally we had to show you. So this is Happy Loon. This company actually makes a lot of stuff to make your day a little more easier. You're going to save time, but as well as it's going to be safer. So the main thing that they make is something that it's probably something that everyone's like, every time they see it, they're like, I should get those. And then they forget. And then they hook into the carpet of their car. They hook into the back seat. They hook into the net in their car. And they're like, dang it, I wish I had that. So what he has is actually, it's the lure wraps. So these wraps, like the protective sleeves that go around your lure. So if you're someone like me that likes to rig up the night before you go fishing and tie in all my baits, what happens is when you bundle them together, all those hooks just get attached to the line and they hook into each other and you put them in your car and it hooks into the back seat and then you pull them out of the car and it hooks into your hand. It's a terrible experience. So I'm going to show you real quick. So right here, I actually got my jerkbait rod and he has a few different versions. This is the one that I like personally. And it's basically a clear plastic sleeve. Here, this is Velcro. Oh yeah.
It's like a little envelope.
Yeah. So I got a jerkbait here. I'm going to just put that right over top of the lure. And it's thick plastic. It's not going to poke through unless you literally just crush down on it, which you're not because your fragile rod is inside. And it covers all of the hooks. It's going to protect, your lure from the inside of your car from getting banged around. But also those treble hooks are not going to get stuck into other rods, your hand, your car. Mm-hmm. How many times have you had like a lure stuck in like the carpet of your car and you're just trying to get it out? You're like, come on, the fish are biting. So that is a really cool product.
Yeah.
And again, it has a loon on it. So, you got to buy it.
It's one of those places you're going to order from them. You're going to get it and you're going to say, just what I wanted.
Yeah. So it's basically what he sells is it's fishing safety and protection kits. So basically this particular kit that I'm showing you right here, it comes with that rod sleeve. It also comes with 2 of them. So you have 2. But it also comes with, you've seen us, I get so many people ask me where I buy mine, but this is snap lock treble hook guards. So the guards, they're plastic guards that basically snap onto your treble hooks on your baits. Now, a lot of people like myself, if you have a jerkbait box that, it's just you're chucking a bunch of baits in, what happens when you try to pull one out? Well, you know what happens. Like
you get
50 of them are stuck together and it takes you longer to literally pull them apart than it would be to fish the whole day. And I ended up buying a bunch of treble hook guards and I'd snap them onto my baits. Now he has a really cool design because these are actually spring loaded, which is pretty cool. So it's got 2 little tabs on the side. You just push down on them and then the hook keeper pops open, and then you slide your treble hook in, it snaps down and it locks. Here, listen, you can hear that. Snap. That was it locking. And it locks completely over the whole hook, even the barbs. The other ones I bought, the hook goes in, but sometimes the tips of the hooks kind of stick out, and that kind of defeats the purpose. So this is a very cool design. This particular kit comes with medium-sized ones, which are great for regular-sized bass lures, but it also comes with large ones too, which are better for bigger-sized bass lures or small pike lures. So those are really cool. And it comes with 2 12-packs. So you're good for a bunch of lures. The other kit has a different version of his rod sleeve that goes around the rod. So just see which one you like better. Comes with a bunch of those, but it also comes with a waterproof bag. This is very thick plastic. It has a waterproof zipper. You can check your phone, your wallet, your keys, whatever things you have in your boat that you don't want to get wet, it comes with that.
And a nice loop to clip it onto the side of your boat.
Yeah.
So if you flip, like you're fishing on a small craft and you flip, at least it's in a waterproof bag.
Yeah.
And it's still attached to your boat.
So I always think like stuff like this, it's not exciting stuff to buy, but it's stuff that you always regret not buying. You're like, I wish I bought that or something like that. So we are guilty of that.
Or it's things to protect your investment too, right? Like we spend money on our phones. That's why you buy phone cases. So when you're on the water, you need something that will protect your phone if your boat flips. Or, you get fancy, jerk baits, and now you spend money on good hooks and you get it jammed into your car seat, and then you got to clip your hook off or you're going to rip your car seat to shreds. But if you had these little hook guards or this lure wallet, like that's the kind of stuff where you protect your investment and it's worth it. It makes you get to enjoy your day more rather than, cursing because your brand new SUV 4Runner has hooks in its back seat now, and you have to take them out before your kids get their ears stuck in. You gotta enjoy your day because, hey, I just pulled my rod out, undid this Velcro, and I can start fishing.
Yeah. So the rod sleeves that go over the lures, that is something I'm guilty of not having for a long time. And I've hooked my cars so many times because I kind of slide them in over the seat when I go fishing with Andrew, and they just dangle down. And I've got to the point where I'm like, okay, I have to take the hooks off, my baits off. But sometimes you're going between lakes or you're going on a trip. It's like, I don't have time to undo all my lures. It's just annoying. So I do find these hook keepers as well with the spring loaded. They cover the complete hook, snaps down on the bait. That's awesome. That's very cool. I didn't even know that existed. So definitely check that out. So again,
I like that design more.
Yeah. Oh, I do too.
With it clip on. Because the other ones where you kind of push on and just kind of pull off, and it's just kind of friction based. I'm always worried that I'm going to stab myself because, my hands are slippery, the bait's wet, and I go to like push it on and just like jab it into my thumb, or you pull it off and it's going to like finally let go, and then my finger is hanging over top of it and just past the barb. These here, it's just effortless. You don't have to like force it on or pull it off. It just clips on.
Yeah.
It's
and
nice.
That's why these are called the ultimate fishing safety and protection kits, because you don't want to stab yourself. So the kit, there's 2 kits again. He has an Amazon shop. He has an Instagram account. I'm going to link everything down in the description. But he has 2 kits. One has a bunch of different sleeves in different colors. It has like 3 or 4 of them. And then this bigger kit is the one that I personally like because it has that waterproof bag. And for me, I love waterproof bags because, again, we bring our phones in the car or in the lake, and we're fishing in a canoe oftentimes. But it also comes with 2 packs of those hook guards, and as well as some of the hook sleeves as well for keeping your lures on your bait. So Happy Loon has donated 2 full kits, which is going to be one of these and the other kit. So you get 2. So you're going to have a whole bunch of rod sleeves, a whole bunch of hook covers, and a waterproof bag. And Andrew's going to draw that this coming week. So 2 Patreon members are going to win those kits. That's a great kit to get. And as well, it's also a really good gift. So if you win it and you already have that stuff, by all means, give it to someone who doesn't have it, and then they owe you one. So we would like to thank Happy Loon Fishing for that. Again, we're going to link all this stuff below. If you want to check out their Instagram as well as their Amazon shop, definitely check it out because it's cool stuff. And it has a loon on it. So, I mean, absolutely, you got to buy it. We're biased. Absolutely. I got a few more questions if you don't mind, Andrew.
Yeah, we're doing a couple more questions, and then we're going to have a little bit of a story time at the end as a little gift for you guys.
What? I mean, you don't want to listen to...
Let's answer a couple more questions.
You don't want to listen to more of this
unedited ranting.
Here's a question from Southern Ontario Angling. He says, would you rather catch a 10-pound smallmouth or a 15-pound largemouth? That's a good one.
10-pound smallie.
For sure, 100%.
I'd have to, I can't imagine the football of a smallmouth that would be. I've seen videos of guys, pull in 15-pound largemouth or close to or whatever, right? Like 13 pounds. And these things are just like absolutely grotesque. All it is a giant belly because it's guaranteed in pre-spawn.
Yeah.
That's when you're going to get it. But a smallmouth that size,
That's a giant.
that would just be like smallmouth their whole lives remain athletic. So it's not like catching, it's like catching Thor in the first movie, not in like after Avengers Endgame, That's my comparison between the two.
You're more likely to catch a 10-pound smallmouth in Ontario than a 15-pound largemouth anyway. Not that we'd have to be in Ontario to catch these fish, but yeah, definitely smallmouth. Here's a good question from I Catch Dinks.
So, a complete opposite of the last question. All right.
He says, what is it that makes fishing so enjoyable for both of you?
I find it's the fact that it's kind of like a reward. So every time I catch a fish, I sprinkle a bit of MSG on my tongue, and then I just get really addicted to it. And yeah, it just releases those endorphins.
Airway does not endorse using MSG, which is a terrible Chinese chemical put in food.
Yeah, but it tastes so good.
I'm sure it does. Uncle Roger agrees. I like fishing. Obviously, fishing definitely has therapeutic benefits for a lot of people. A lot of people use it as to relax, stress reliever, stuff like that. I'm not saying I don't enjoy it because of those things. I absolutely do. But for me, it's about personal accomplishment. Like that's why I think I've been getting into musky fishing, is because I've been doing other types of fishing for a long time, like steelhead fishing. Everyone's like, "Oh, you haven't fished the creeks this year." I'm like, "Yeah, because I've done that the last 15 years. I want to learn something new." I'm not saying I couldn't learn to be better steelhead fishing, because I definitely could try to be better. But I like learning new things. I like challenging myself. Like I like being like, "Hey, I want to catch a musky on the topwater this year," and just go out and every time check topwater until I catch one, or try new things, or try to catch the bigger, musky. We're like, "Oh, me and Andrew are trying to catch bigger PBs every year." And I just find the challenge exciting. I don't like the challenge of being in like a tournament situation. I don't like high stress, but I also like just challenging myself every year to have goals. And they don't have to be crazy goals. It's not like, "Oh, this year I have to catch a 55-inch muskie." Yeah, that's not going to happen. But reasonable goals. And then when you accomplish them, you feel really good. You're like, I finally caught that, 4-pound bass. That was great. Like I had to work hard. I had to get my technique down. I had to get my gear down right. And I finally caught it. And then you just feel good. And just don't compare yourself to other people. Other people are like, "Oh, 4 pounds, that's not a very big PB." It's like, I don't care what your PB is. I just care what my PB is, because it's me. I don't know who you are. So personal accomplishment for sure. I also like fishing with people. Like I Catch Dinks. We had the pleasure of fishing with him and his girlfriend this year for salmon out in our canoes. And it's nice to meet other people that enjoy the same thing as you, even if you don't like them in real life. Just kidding. He's a cool guy.
Yeah, I love fishing. The social aspect of it, if you can fish with a friend, like 95% of the time when I'm fishing, it's with Jesse.
Poor Andrew.
Yeah, I know. But it's a great time for us to be able to like hang out. But yeah, like Jesse hit the nail on the head. That accomplishment you get, like I can't go to a job, any job that I've had in my entire life, you get that job satisfaction. Even when I worked at like Crown spraying cars like a monkey, like I'd spray every car as if it was my own. I had to do that so that I'd feel like I did something good. And there's fishing. It's a constant effort that you have to put in order to improve, but also just continue to be successful. Like every cast you make, you're making decisions throughout the day. And it's one of those things too, where it's kind of like no risk. So if that kind of makes sense, like for me, life can be stressful. It can be, full of anxiety and whatnot. But when you go fishing, it's like, if I don't catch, what's the worst thing going to happen? I'm not going to catch a fish. But I can like take charge and make my own decisions, and maybe it'll pay off, and maybe I catch like my new PB. Like there's all that like excitement that can come with it that you just can't get with anything else. And it's a vice that isn't, a negative one on your life.
Yeah. Worst case scenario, you just spend a beautiful day out in the water.
Yeah.
But yeah, fishing is...
Or a rainy one. Yeah. But hey.
You know what they say? Even a bad day on the water is better than a good day in the office, right? Fishing is something different for everyone, right? And if you're just getting into the sport, you may not truly understand the intense depth of passion that somebody that's been fishing for 30 years has, and their obsession with it. But don't worry, you'll quickly understand, because you'll become obsessed too. It's addictive. Here's a great question from a guy. He says, "What kind of handles do you prefer on your fishing rod?" So I think he means like cork, composite, foam, carbon fiber. I think that
he could also mean like full or split grip or something like that.
I'd say the most common handles you're going to have is, material wise, you're going to have cork, or you're going to have high density foam, like EVA foam. I'm a huge cork guy. I love cork. Unfortunately, most modern rods, because cork is expensive, most modern rods have kind of gone to, a high density EVA, which I used to be against, but I have a lot of rods now that have that, and I don't mind them. It doesn't bother me at all. When I'm fishing, I'm not looking down at it being like, ugh, I wish this was cork. I like cork. I like how it looks. I like how it feels. But I have other rods. I also have rods that have monocoque handles, like the Shimano X Prides or the Zodiases. They have just like a pure carbon, very sensitive rear grip, and then a little foam one at the top. So I think it all just goes down to personal preference. I prefer full cork, especially for musky fishing. Full cork. I don't like split grip. Full cork. But for bass rods, it is nice to have. It just seems a little more sporty. It's like having a sports car. You have a little, a split grip, a high density foam or like monocoque handle. It's like, ooh, sporty, light.
Yeah. I do prefer cork, maybe just because it is like the original, the OG. It's old, and I like holding on to those kind of vintage or retro stuff. Not that I'm saying I use vintage rods, because they suck compared to new stuff. But I have my fair share of them. But yeah, I do like cork. The only thing that I would say is I don't mind split grip, but if, musky fishing or for salmon fishing, something where it has that long rod butt that you tuck under your arm, I want full cork, like a full, or even if it's foam. Like, I'm not against foam, but if there's the same rod had a choice of either, I would go for cork. And then the only other thing that I like to have, especially on like my bass rods, is, and a lot of the ones nowadays they have it, is the rod blank is exposed right where your kind of index finger sits right above the reel. So that helps with a bit of sensitivity, being able to have direct contact. It's not trying to have those vibrations pass through the handle to the cork. It's your fingers right on that rod itself. So you're still getting the sensitivity.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's pretty much a given on most rods anyway.
Yeah, pretty much now. And I'd say when it comes to, like, for instance, musky fishing rods, a lot of them are full cork. A lot of them are split grip. A lot of companies like St. Croix, like, they have a Legend Tournament Musky series, which is a high-end series. They offer the same models with straight cork or split grip, because they know that, generally speaking, it just comes down to personal preference. Some guys love a split grip. Some guys hate it. I got a split grip rod, St. Croix, and for what I used it for, I was ripping rubber with it. It digged into my ribs. I don't like it for that specific rod. I'm like, I hate this. So I'm going to like fill it in with some like wind grip. That's another one, wind grip. I have a musky rod that it's foam with wind grip around, which is like a grippy, like golf club material. I like that as well. So yeah, personal preference.
Yeah. And if you're worried about your cork kind of like going bad and degrading, once it starts to go, be a true Canadian. Just wrap some hockey tape around that butt end. Everybody?
Yeah. All right, here's a good last question. Actually, it's from Jen at Fin Addiction Guide Service, which kind of takes us into story time. But she says, what's your favorite species to fish for? Why don't you go first, Andrew?
I'd have to say pike.
Yeah.
I can do it year round. Year round. The topwater bite for them can be awesome and amazing and fun. Yeah, I would go for pike. It's toss up between that and smallies, but I'd have to err on the side of pike, because then you can have fun catching a bunch of hammer handles if you want to just have fun and catch a whole bunch of fish, or if you want to challenge yourself and try and go for a 40, like they're out there. Like I think that's mine.
I'd have to say, like, as much as I like pike fishing right now, it would probably be musky. Like Andrew said, I'm kind of like focusing on that. I've learned so much in the last like 3 years. Like they're
both Essex.
Yeah.
So, hey, that's we agree to some extent.
I mean, like, we've caught musky for years, but it's just been like the last 2 or 3 years that we actually started legit targeting them. I caught musky like 15 years ago when bass fishing. It's not a big deal. That's not musky fishing. That's bass fishing. But there's something really that I enjoy tremendously, chucking big baits and just having a fish inhale it. It's amazing, especially when you catch them on big baits. People are like, "Oh, I caught this 40-inch musky on a bass lure." It's like, meh. It's different when it comes up and eats like a 10 or 12-inch bait. It's crazy. I don't know. I can't describe it, but I love that. But the problem is with musky fishing is it sucks and it's really hard. But I like it. Because the cool thing with musky fishing is you can literally just go musky fishing and completely be terrible at it. And then when someone asks you if you caught any fish, just be like, yeah, it's musky fishing. And they're just like, yeah, brother. So you can be terrible at it.
You do not need to make
excuses. There's no excuses.
You just be like, did you catch one? Nope. And everyone understands.
Yeah. See, if I was a sunfish fisherman and I said I didn't catch any, they'd look at you like you're just completely insane. So anyway, that's all the questions for this week, because we're kind of going overtime. But we do have, like Andrew said, story time. So why don't you start off, Andrew?
Yeah. So like Jesse alluded to, Jen asked that question. And Jesse and I, we will just spend the whole day with Jen and her husband. And let's not forget Bob. Bob was in the boat too.
Yeah. So it was Jen and Scott, her husband, and Bob, who, by the way, they're all members of Musky Canada, just so you know.
Yep.
They're hardcore musky guys. and girls.
So we had the privilege of going with them. Jen and Scott, they run Fin Addiction guiding service. So we were fishing on Moira Lake out by Belleville area, and kind of between Toronto and Kingston, if you don't know. And it was cool. It's a cool day. Temperatures were fairly chilly. I had my float suit bibs on. I'm like, I'm not risking it. I get cold feet and cold legs. I'm like, I'm bundling up some thick socks.
Yeah.
Got my whole snow pants on. I was like, I thought I'd break this out in the hard water season, but nope, I'm breaking it out in November. But yeah, it was really nice. The weather was actually gorgeous. Like it was cold, yes, but it warmed up. We had our jackets off in the afternoon, and the wind wasn't bad. It was
bright blue skies
all day.
Nice sun. Got a little bit of sun on our face. You know, my face had a little bit of redness at the end of the day. It was nice. It's like probably the last nice day of the year. I don't know, maybe. It was cool because so Jen and Scott, they have a big pontoon boat. It's a 20-foot pontoon boat.
Yeah.
So it's lots of space. So
it's my first time fishing off of a pontoon.
Me too. Yeah.
Like actually like fishing, like hardcore.
I thought it was going to be weird, but it wasn't bad. I actually, there's lots of space.
So much space. I love it. I kind of want a pontoon boat.
Yeah, very comfy.
You have couches to sit on. Like forget little fold up chairs, or you have those little like, booster seats you sit in a bass boat. Like this is a couch. You're sitting in a couch trolling.
Yes, it's amazing. So I thought we were going to do a lot of trolling, but it turns out she's like, no, we're going to be casting. So we were chucking some pretty big rubber baits. Again, it's fall, fish are feeding up. Right in the morning, I saw one, probably within half an hour. I saw a pretty decent size, like high 30s, 40-incher swim right beside the boat. And I was like, she's like, okay, they're moving. This is a good sign.
10 minutes later, I had about a 30-inch come follow my bait too. Yeah. So we saw two pretty close.
Yeah. And we basically, Jen and Scott, they fish that lake. They're guides. They fish that lake almost every day. And they know that lake like the back of their hand. They know every spot, every hump, where the weeds start. And they were just driving around with the trolling motor, and they're like, all right, we're coming up on a hump. So we're just casting all day long. Again, it's musky fishing. We're not expecting to catch like 50 fish, but I kind of promised her because they're keeping track of the amount of muskies they've caught this year, and they were at 81. And I said to her the day before, I was like, you know what? 82 and 83, we'll catch for you. Don't worry about it. So she took us out. We're going around. And towards the end of the day, we'd seen some fish, but nothing had taken. And kind of, I was like,
well, we saw those two. We rose two. And then I had one swipe on my Ratzilla, but it was an ill-timed, like I was kind of doing a pull pause
as it tried to grab it,
retrieve with it, and it was an ill-timed pull. it hit just as I pulled forward, and I just saw it turn sideways and swipe at the tail. And I'm like, no. Yeah. It looked like a healthy fish though, nice and thick, not like crazy long.
Yeah.
But definitely, I'd say in the high 30s, but like thick.
Not like Kawartha fish are very thin. The fish out of Moira, they're thicker, healthier looking fish.
They're healthy,
from what I've seen anyway. But anyway, we were fishing. Yeah, Andrew missed one, so we were kind of all hyped up, like, oh, they're starting to bite again. So we went to the other side of the lake. We were casting, and all day I was chucking pretty big baits, like 10 swim baits, big Royal Orbas, stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try something smaller, because I remember listening to musky guys, and they're like, you know what? Fish are going to hit big baits in the fall, but if they're not, try something smaller. So I tied on tried and true Hellhound, which is a 6-inch bait. This may look like a big bait. It's not. This bait doesn't weigh that much. I'd consider this like...
Yeah, he's straight arming it in the video. That's why it looks...
Look how big that is. No, but it's not a big bait.
The size of his head.
There are way bigger glide baits. I caught a muskie a few weeks ago on our backcountry trip on this bait, so I had a lot of confidence in it, and I chucked that thing out on the third cast. I don't know if that fish, because we had fished that area pretty thoroughly with big baits. Didn't move. I chucked this out on the third cast. I was zigzagging it back, and I let it pause, and this fish came up and just came up like a beluga whale. I was like, just crushed it, and I just like reeled in, set the hook. It was a heavy fish. It was big, and Jen and Scott, for one thing about them is they are legit absolute weapons to get fish in the boat. Like they have it dialed. Like they had the net, they had everything ready. They were like, "Wait, you move over here. I'll get this." They scooped that fish up, and luckily they did right in time. Jen scooped it up quick because the lure just popped out of the thing's mouth. It wasn't hooked super good, which was crazy. And they got it in, and she was just like, "Oh my God, it's so heavy, it's big." And it turned out to be a 44-inch, which again, not a giant, but it was a big fish, and it was fat.
And it's his new PB.
Yeah. So
he's kind of like comic. It's his new PB. Like, that's awesome. You broke it this year.
My PB was very sad for a long time, but I'll tell you, we mostly fish small rivers.
Mine's half an inch, not as sad.
Yeah. But legit, we usually fish small areas in small canoes. So I mean, like, we've caught tons of smaller fish, but it is nice to finally get a nice chunky fish coming up towards the mid 40 size. So that was good. So we did catch that fish. It was nice. And then later in the day, I caught another small one, but it was pretty small. But it was a good day. They took us onto all the spots that were legit hot spots. It was very comfortable. It would be a great trip. I'd recommend this. If you want to take they can take up to 3 people. If you want to take someone fishing that's not really into fishing the whole day like hardcore, they can sit down and relax in the pontoon boat and you can just keep fishing. So she has very reasonable rates. There's lots of places you can stay nearby. And that lake is full of a healthy population of fish. So we highly recommend it. Definitely check her out. We'll put the link below in what do you call it? The show notes. We'll put the link in the show notes so you can check it out. But yeah.
And if you don't know where to stay nearby, ask Jen. They've got some suggestions for you on nearby Airbnbs and stuff that you can make use of to stay in the area. They even do like weekend trips. You can fish like not just for a half day or a day, but like for 2 days in a row, a whole weekend, and go fishing on this lake. And yeah, they'll do their best to get you on some good fish.
Yeah, and like we were saying, we were fishing with there. I was saying to Jen, like musky guides, it's all a stress because musky are hard to catch. But Jen and Scott will get you in the best opportunity to catch a fish on that lake. They know that lake very, very well. So anyway, we thank Jen and Scott again. And it was nice to meet Bob too, which he's a very nice old man that we fished with, who is, again, a Musky Canada's guy too. So very cool.
Do you remember how old he was?
82.
I forget. They said how old he was.
82.
82? Yeah. He was out. He's just the back of the boat. He's casting. He's got like 14-inch believers and stuff like that. He's
a cool guy.
We're talking about like, oh, like I got some big baits. And he's like, oh, he's pulling these things I've never seen before. Yeah. I'm like, that is
like, what
awesome.
Is that? He's like, I've had that for a few years. It's like a few centuries, maybe.
Yeah, Bob was awesome to have in the boat.
So anyway, Jen, she guides pretty much for musky, and she goes all the way into November. I think by the time you're listening to this, I think she may have a few trips left for this year. But if you're looking for next year, I'd highly recommend it. Definitely check it out.
Thank you. So yeah, that's our story time. So, long story short, Jesse got 2, I caught none. What else is new? But we did have a lot of fun on Saturday. We have another trip coming up. So when this comes out, we will have completed our St. Clair trip. And this is our first time ever going to St. Clair. And hopefully this is where I'll break my PB and smash Jesse's. So here's hoping. Maybe on the next podcast, he'll hear me and I'll be crying and I'll say, oh, that's it for fishing this year for me. And I didn't break any PBs. Well, that's not true. I did in the spring. This is a really good spring, a good year overall.
Yeah, it's been a good year.
But we later on, before the end of the year, we're actually going to have another year in review podcast. Will be kind of our last podcast of the season. But we still got a couple more episodes before then, so don't worry. We got lots of content still coming for you. And but yeah, we're going to wrap up this episode. We want to give a big thank you to everyone who is a Patreon member who helps support the podcast. Again, we listed another great giveaway we're going to be doing, Happy Loon, that our Patreon members are automatically entered to win. So we're going to be having 2 giveaways for them coming up shortly. If you are looking to win yourself, Jesse has a link for our Patreon down below, and just for the low price of like buying us a cup of coffee once a month, you too can be entered automatically to win these giveaways. Another big thank you to all of our listeners. If you're just listening, first of all, thank you. Second of all, please write us a review. Reviews help a lot. We like you more if you write reviews. We like you if you listen. We like you more if you write reviews.
It's true.
And we like you even more if it's a 5-star. But yeah, that's about it for the show this week. And as tradition states, we're going to finish it off with a quote of the week. And Jesse's done a lot of talking this episode, so he thinks, oh, Andrew's going to volunteer. Nope, you got to do another one, Jesse.
I got a clever one. Ready? This is the quote of the week. The quote of the week is, if you don't want to get a hook in your hand, make sure you check out this brand.